what sort of season have you had?
Well, it couldn't have been any more different to last year, could it? I think we were very worried coming into this year as a whole country that we would see an effect from the drought last year. And those of you that have stood by our baler in the hop picking machine, have a look at the 1976 and 1977 figures, because 77 was a lower crop. So I think there was a really big concern. Obviously, the very wet July and August has helped the whole country. So I don't think it's as bad as it could have been, so that's good. But I don't think we're going to think we've got stunning yields. I think the result will be lower than we would have hoped for, but it's not as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, I think generally countrywide here we've seen hops improve rapidly in the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks. On the Harlequin in particular, it's been a rapid increase from something looking very weak and poorly to something that actually looks half decent now. So the crop has come back quite well. So that's in the UK. Anything else to add about the UK crop?
A few of us have had some hail. You might have noticed that when you're out and about. That's a bit of a trying thing to deal with. It's written off our apple crop, so that's very, very depressing. I think nationally, just to sort of give you a picture of hectareages and where we are and post-COVID, for 20 to 25 years, the British hop crop had been at about 1,000 hectares. So it was been very static for a long time. We've dropped to 571 hectares, which is a 41% decrease. We really need to get that back up. There is empty wire work out there, and that's really bad news for growers because that is land that you're not making a profit out of. So, yeah, we really need to get that moving again for growers. But I'll come on to the innovation and what's happening in a minute.
Yeah, we're doing our best on that, aren't we? Just trying to get things through. Further east, Slovenia. Bostjan.
Hello, everyone.
It's been quite a tumultuous year in southern Europe, and Slovenia, I suppose, has perhaps avoided that a little bit. But you did have some nasty floods a few weeks ago that we saw on TV here in the UK. How did that affect the crop, and how has the season been generally?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I didn't quite understand this French word you said, but it sounds like a French to me.
It meant a lot.
It meant a lot, yeah. But I know what you're trying to say, but because we were facing the same thing back in Slovenia this year, we had pretty much all weather that's possible. We have pretty much wet spring, and then again immediately a big heat wave, and then again a lot of rain, floods, some hailstorms, and then again really hot weather. And first at the beginning of August, we were thinking that we were going to have a late crop or late harvest, but then the hops get really ripen really fast. So we were too late somehow at some point. So, but in the average, we're still expecting a decent crop, on an average crop or a little bit below average. The quality is good. The alphas are okay. The oil contents are really pretty much okay. So yes. Perhaps a bit of a brown hops because of the downy mildew issue, but that's all, yeah.
How is the yield this year? Sorry, not the yield, the acreage this year compared to last year? Does any drop, or does it go up a bit, or what happened?
Actually, we stayed somehow on the same acreages that we did, because we were gain that we remained these acreages because the rest of the Europe, the German, had a bit of bad crops in this past few years, so we remain this level because our hops can be a good substitute also for the German Perla or something, our main variety, Aurora, goes in this direction. So, yeah, we pretty much stay with something like with 2,000 and with 1,700 hectares, and the crop estimations are something like 2,000, 6,000 tons, So, pretty much a little bit below average, yeah.
Very good. Thanks, Bostjan. Good to hear from you. Thank you for coming over from Slovenia to talk to us. That's very kind. We'll come back to you in a second.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Now, Will, on my right here, is filling in for all of the nations. Will has got rest of the world written across his forehead, and he's going to talk about all the... Where would you like to start, Will?
We'll start with the USA, I think.
Let's do the USA, because the USA is the biggest acreage in the world, and they've reduced acreage, I believe, a little bit this year.
A little bit, and there's been a lot of changing in acreage. But I've written a little report, and if anybody's got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So, growing conditions were defined by two very different periods in the Pacific Northwest. Very cold start to the year, followed by a very hot May. Plants grew so quickly that they actually needed to apply extra fertilizer. They were looking stressed out in the fields. The hot May meant the snowcap melted quicker than they were expecting and led to some restrictions placed on irrigation. The hops don't appear to have been affected, however, which is a relief. You thought I was building up to a shortage then, didn't you? Idaho got enough snow to last 2 years. They had massive amounts of snow. Washington had some downy mildew pressure, but very quick action prevented the spread. As Paul mentioned, there was a big change in acreage this year. Citra and Mosaic were reduced a lot, so there was a lot of new planting going on. Root planting should normally start as early as March, and potted roots are planted later in the summer. The hops didn't develop well in the pots, and so were planted out very late. So, unusually for the US, new plantings are looking very weak and will not produce quite the 70 to 80% of a normal crop that they normally get in the first year, perhaps closer to 40%. Mature alpha crops look very strong, so good yields are expected on those. Early harvest is showing good quality hops, with expectation being of at least an average crop, despite a reduction in acreage. It's expected that production will exceed that of last year, even on that slightly reduced acreage. Some heat stress caused early bloom in susceptible varieties like Centennial, and Centennial has actually finished harvesting now and is very short. So if that's a hop that's key to you, please do talk to us and get it contracted. Cascade, however, looks great. Willamette has suffered from reduced vigour due to progressively earlier harvesting. Overall, quality looks great and aromas too. Later varieties are looking even better. Fires have been present and they've been a subject of several hop walk talks in the past, but they've all been well away from hop growing areas this time, so we're not expecting any smoke damaged hops this year. Okay?
Great, thanks, Will. So Citra and Mosaic going down in acreage. How much roughly do you think has come out?
The estimate originally was 10,000 acres, but I believe actually it's close to 5,000. Right. And much of that has been replanted. So the overall acreage in the US has only come down by, I think, 2,000 acres.
And they've replanted with high alpha varieties like Columbus, Tomahawk, and Zeus because they see the shortages from Germany last year. So they were trying to counteract that.
Yeah, they're mostly going after the high alpha market, which they see as Germany is having continued problems producing a crop because of the drought. So it's very attractive for them to plant high alpha hops. They have also, however, planted things like Centennial and some of the new proprietary varieties. So it's not exclusively high alpha, but that is the vast majority of the new acreage.
And irrigation, I know we heard some stories you mentioned about the water shortages. It's really interesting to note that in Germany, they want to start irrigating, but they can't get water. There isn't enough reservoirs in the Hallertau region where most of the German hops are grown to be able to irrigate those varieties. So this is a worry going forward for German hops, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps we should cover that in Germany, but in the US, in the US, they have the advantage of taking melted snowpack from the Cascade Mountains, and they dam up the rivers, and they can release it as and when they need to. But if you look at the Hallertau region in Germany, it's just north of Munich, so it's quite close to the Alps, and you'd think there might be a possibility for snowpack there. But when you think of the areas of population, they've got massive conurbations in that part of Germany. They can't take water away from people. In the US, they don't have any population to compete with, so they can take that water. It's not a problem. But in Germany, they will have problems downstream in those rivers if they take the water away to put in the hops. They have now got permission to build some irrigation lakes, though, and they're planning on trying to capture rain and snowpack rather than damming up the rivers.
It's quite incredible when we talk about the floods in Slovenia and then the drought in Germany. how far are you away from Germany? About 5-hour drive, something like that.
Yeah,
And
600 kilometers.
how the weather is changing so much and so local. We talked about the hail as well earlier on. It's making it very difficult for hop growers to anticipate what's going on.
Can I talk about water?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why British hops should be your first choice is because we do have enough water. We're not very good. The infrastructure isn't very good. Nationally, it's pretty rubbish. But enough water falls on our island because we've got a lovely maritime climate, even last year. And that is very different to continental Europe and the semi-arid climate that Will is describing in the US. That's what it is. It's a desert, it's semi-arid. So they are lucky that they've got the snowpack. That's brilliant. But actually, we're not putting pressure on water tables here in the UK. And actually, I would just, there's a parallel with what you were saying about rural areas not putting pressure on conurbations. That's very much the case here in Herefordshire and Worcestershire.
That snowpack in the US isn't guaranteed either.
I know.
We've had a couple of years where they've had very low levels of snow up in the Cascades, and that's caused stress to the growers. If they'd had particularly hot summers after those mild winters, they would have had serious problems.
Yeah. So interesting to see how climate change is affecting hop growing. We'll come on to that a little bit more in a minute about the developments that we're doing. But I pre-jumped into Germany. Can we now jump fully into Germany and talk about what's happening there at the moment?
Of course, Paul. We'll jump into Germany now. There we go.
Oh, we've even got videos of it. Oh, that's
we,
Mario.
We do have a video, but we've got no sound, I'm afraid. So you didn't want sound anyway. You could listen to me instead. In the spring, the hop work started late due to heavy rainfall and low temperatures. Basically, there was too little rain from mid-May to the end of July. This period is particularly important for the development of hop vines. In addition, there were very many hot days in June with temperatures above 30 degrees C and a strong easterly wind that caused the hop soils to dry out. In general, however, the hop yards are very healthy, with only isolated cases of disease and or pests. Regarding the climate change, Regarding climate change and dry as well as hot June and July months, the topic of irrigation in the hop gardens becomes more and more relevant to the general public. And this is where we're talking about them building irrigation lakes. As a result, the beginning of blooming was about a week earlier than average, and the hop vines are rather pointed, they call it. They look a bit like a Christmas tree, so they're narrow at the top and wide at the base, with shortened lateral arm formation. The late rains in July still allowed the hops to develop relatively well. Favourable weather conditions in August have caused the alpha acid contents to rise significantly. Nevertheless, a weak report in terms of volume is to be expected. The development of the alpha acid content remains exciting until harvest and remains to be seen. The alphas are going up significantly with the rainfall that they've had. Early varieties in particular, such as Hersbrucker, Mittelfrüh, Tettnang and Pearl, will be quite significantly short in volume this year. Later varieties have had time to benefit from the favourable weather conditions and are expected to produce below but close to average yields.
Thanks, Will. I remember early June we were talking to some of our German colleagues, German growers, about the crop, and they were absolutely devastated by the drought situation there and how hot and dry it was. And was there actually going to be any crop at all? We weren't sure whether we were going to get anything there at all. Worse than last year was predicted at that stage, wasn't it?
The Growers Association there, which is normally quite a good source of information, was predicting a 50% crop. We always accuse the Germans of being slightly... They like to talk up a crisis, but the Growers Association is normally fairly accurate. So 50% is what it looked like at the beginning of June.
And then it rained. Bit like
and
here.
rained.
And rained, yeah. And as Bostjan said, we got a lot of rain there. So the crop overall, we've got some worries about the early German varieties. We've got some worries about Centennial. Prices fairly stable at the moment.
We've still got some other countries to cover, Paul.
Oh, have we? Sorry,
we
okay.
do,
All right, yeah. Czech Republic.
Poland.
Poland next, okay.
Poland.
So I'm well briefed on this, you can see.
It's smooth. So this is courtesy of Darius Koziel, who you can see behind us now. Spring was cold, making field work impossible to complete in a timely manner. This cold weather persisted and growth of plants was delayed. Slow growth was exacerbated by drought and many varieties failed to reach the top wire on the trellis. Pearl and Tradition in particular have suffered from the delayed development and yields are expected to be significantly lower than average. Lubelski is being harvested now and is picking well, with yields expected to be around the 10-year average and seems to have survived the conditions much better than other varieties. Alpha varieties, which are normally more robust than their aroma counterparts, have also suffered with delayed development. Microclimate and regional soil differences mean that some small areas look very good, whilst the majority looks extremely thin. Demand for seasonal workers has been high, but unfortunately the continuing situation in Ukraine has meant that there are limited numbers of workers available. On a positive note, alpha varieties with a further 20 days of development time look very promising, and they're expecting the crop to improve.
Thanks, Will. Next one. Is this the last one? Czech Republic.
Czech Republic, yeah. The trend for warmer, drier winters in Czech continued, but at the end of March and covering April, the weather turned colder with much needed rain. Spring fieldwork was completed on time and plants began to grow well. May stayed cold but dry and growth slowed. Warmer weather came at the end of June and into early July, but no rain. This stress caused plants to stop growing and start to bloom. The hop plants did not reach the top wire of the trellis. This has reduced shading in hop yards and the plants are hopping well down the plant, but are quite thin. Late July and August were cooler with rain, meaning the cones have grown well. Rainstorms in August damaged some hop yards, but this was extremely localised. Extremely hot weather from mid-August onwards brought on ripening of hop cones, and the harvest was started early on the 23rd of August. The Sarts crop is now 3/4 harvested. Hop yards with deep valley bottom soils have been yielding well. More exposed hop yards on thinner soil have achieved well below average yields, but overall the crop appears to be in line with long-term averages. Alphas so far are slightly below average, but the aroma is excellent. Sladek and Premiant are yet to be started, but look very promising indeed. Most has not been picked yet, but so far is looking very good. Aromas are intense, and we're expecting to harvest these on the 10th of September. Disease and pest pressures have been low, some small incidences of alpha and red spider mite, but these have been easily controlled. Few issues with downy mildew, but unusually for the Czech Republic, there have been some incidences of powdery mildew caused by the more humid conditions than are typical.
Okay, thanks, Will. Any questions for Will on the agronomics of these countries? Anything that anybody wants to talk about there? No, okay. So market-wise, how do we feel? What's happening market-wise? I'll come back to you. Ali, what's happening market-wise with the crop here? I know we're under lots of pressure with rising costs and energy in particular, but how are you finding things?
So I think we are sharing the same pain as everybody in the room on energy and workforce costs, actually. I was doing some maths about if you use the national living wage as the benchmark, the inflation between March 2022 and next year, when it's forecast to be £11.20 per hour, that inflation from March 22 to April 2024 is 26%. So that really hurts us because that's nearly 40% of our turnover. I'm not sure what it is for I'm not sure what the workforce ratio to turnover is, but it's very high for us because we've got so many human hands, especially at the beginning of the season. And energy, well, I don't need to tell you, it's gone up. Depends on where you are, depends on what you're buying, depends on whether you're in a contract or not. For us, for hops, it's about gas, and that is sitting at 100% higher than it was 2 years ago. So, that's hurting. Because actually that's not coming back from the market. So I think to try and answer your question, not from a farm point of view, but from a national point of view, growers need confidence. oh my God. And let's face it, the government's not giving any of us any confidence at the moment. But we really need confidence. And confidence from the market comes from long-term relationships. It comes from contracts. You know, Will sat here saying, contract centennial. Never mind centennial. Please contract some British hops. Please think about not just 1 year, but think about what your brewery is going to be needing over the next 2 to 3, because it's very hard for us to get contracts out of these guys unless you're giving them some confidence. And that is very difficult for us at the moment, because with the reductions in acreage that growers have had to deal with, we've lost growers. We've lost 5 growers. We've lost 2 of the biggest in the country. They've gone, and they ain't coming back. And all that infrastructure's gone. And there's quite a lot that are teetering and sitting over lunch talking to other growers. There are more that are going to go. So we need some confidence, and that comes with confidence from you. Confidence which you may not feel that you've got at the moment. So I suppose my message is we want to share the pain. We need to talk to each other more. We need to make sure that any degree of confidence that you're giving these guys is showing itself in a contract, because then that contract can come down to the growers. I am really worried, if I'm honest, about how many more growers we're going to lose. We don't really need to be losing any more acreage, because then it makes the innovation really hard. And in a minute, Paul's going to ask me about the innovation, so I can talk about all the really exciting stuff that we're trying to invest in. And that is what I'm trying to protect, is that innovation, because that's our future. As it is with your businesses, if you can't invest, if you can't make those capital investments in the next thing you want to do in your brewery, you're not going forward. You're standing still, and standing still is no good for any business. And actually, we've gone backwards. And I'm sure some of you are sitting here probably feeling like you've gone backwards as well. It's shit, isn't it? So we've got to try and find a way forward together to where there is some confidence, to share that confidence, please.
Thanks, Sally. Bostjan, same thing in the Slovenia, I guess. You've got extra fuel costs, labour. Where does most of the labour come from for Slovenia this year, from the farms?
Most of the labor comes from Romania. They're actually Romanian workers, good workers. So, they demand more and more each year. So we pay them more.
Yeah, I think it's the same in the US. I think the US were talking about huge increases in labor costs. They used to employ people without overtime, and now they've got to pay overtime over a certain time.
Yeah, there's some new legislation in Washington State that is called, I think it's national legislation in the US, that basically has applied the equivalent of our minimum wage and a maximum overtime structure, which means that the growers' costs are going up quicker than inflation on the labour side.
Yeah, so it's going to be tough for all of us, because it affects you guys as well. These costs are coming through from the market. We're hurting with them. The growers are hurting with them. It's going to be a tough few years getting through, but hopefully we can all survive this together. As Ali says, it's all about working together, trying to get the best results for everybody. And I hope you think that our team and our efforts here for today, and also with the innovation work that we're doing, which I'm going to come on to in a second, Ali, is worthwhile. I mean, we've just seen, those who've been around this morning, seen the Harlequin there. We've got other varieties coming on. We'll have spoken about that. We're working with the British Hop Association on that. So there's lots of new innovation we're trying to bring in to make you, allow you to have better hops to brew beer with, and to get more hops grown on the farms so that we can make these farms successful as well. Ali, you represent the British Hop Association on the breeding program. Clara's here today. Where's Clara? Is she
I don't know. I was just looking for her. Clara, are you here? Can you stand up?
Is she there? She's over there. There you go. Hi,
Fantastic.
Clara.
Stand up again. Just so everybody knows who you are. So this is the amazing Clara, who is Dr. Clara Hadji, our hop breeder, who has taken over from talk about a big ask, taken over from Dr. Peter Darby, who was doing the job since, I think, 1981. So very big boots to fill, but by God, has she filled them. So just to sort of try and be positive about the innovation and the breed, because my God, we are trying to keep this going, and it's hard. We, as you know, have got a national breeding program. Charles Ferrum have now become a part of that in terms of looking at some of the aroma varieties that we've crossed and bred over the last 10 to 15 years. And we've got other projects planned as well, which is really exciting. We're trying to introduce genetics into our breeding program because that will speed it all up, which is what you will want. You want your new varieties faster, so do we. Oh my God, so do we. So we're trying to get the genetics built in. But we're also looking at some things which I think are really exciting. You'll have seen some cover crops in amongst our hops this morning, or you will if you're going out this afternoon. That's really important. It's important for the soil. It's important for biodiversity. But actually, the cover crops that we're using at the moment are quite limited. It's good. It's really good. But they're a bit limited because they're not really introducing biodiversity. So we have made a massive, don't know whether we'll succeed, Innovate UK application for a wildflower project where we would like to plant wildflowers down the alleyways so that it is less of a single monoculture crop. Why do we want to do that? We don't just want to do it because it's good for the environment. We are also looking to introduce predators that might eat some of the critters that like eating our hops. And you know, that would be the panacea. But it is important to our local environment. Will we ever get the government to fund that? I doubt it, because the government's approach, many of you will have heard vaguely about the government's approach here. It's all about rewilding and planting trees. And their approach to environmental measures for farmers is take out your productive crop, take out your food crop or your drink crop, and put something in for the environment instead. I personally think that's bonkers. And so I would like to see it going into the crop, which is what we're trying to do. Let's see if we succeed. Maybe they will have the vision to give us the grant. There's loads of other things going on. Clara and I have been talking about some really quite amazing stuff, if we could pull it off, around how we might utilise AI to help us with assessing aroma and flavour in the hops. I don't know whether we can do it, but we're going to try. We're going round the country at the moment to talk to academics about that. We have told the board, so that's okay. I'm allowed to talk about it. So that could be really exciting, because if we could fast forward the identification of the really high intense aroma hops using AI, my God, that'd be amazing for all of you, because we'd get there faster. At the moment, to get a hop out is a minimum of 10 years. And to get it out fast, the only way to fast forward it is for all of us to take a lot of risk. We did it on Jester. We planted Jester. We didn't know whether it was going to go down with wilt. The growers that planted it, it was showing hermaphrodite tendencies, so it could have become a male. That's not very helpful, because then we would have had no hops. There were lots of risks that both growers and Charles Ferrum took with that. So to try and make sure that we don't have to take those risks in the future, genetics and possibly AI may be the answer. So loads of really exciting innovation. We are tapping on DEFRA's door again to see if they will help us fund some of this. They did come over the line with a tiny grant, for which I'm very grateful, but we definitely need more money. If any of you are talking to government, I don't know whether any of you lobby government about anything, but if you are talking to government, then making sure that government is supporting small industries like ours that are important to yours, please make that case.
Thanks, Ali. And also, I mean, we've been talking about new varieties and development of that, but actually looking at some of the beers on the bar today, we've got some of those new varieties. And thank you to all the brewers who have supplied beer for us. Very much appreciated. I hope you've all been enjoying those beers. But if you look along the bar, the one that really stood out for me was the Goldings that Jeremy did in the lager, which was actually the first one to go today. And sometimes we get overlooked. The Goldings gets overlooked. It's one of the varieties that we grow most of. But if you manage to try it, it's already gone. It was the first one to go off. But if you manage to try it, you'll understand that actually there's such a lot of potential in that variety that sometimes you don't even think about. You know, you just think, well, it's a Golding, it's brown and twiggy. We don't really get on with it. But actually, you tasted that. If you tasted that beer yesterday, it was stunning, absolutely stunning. So have a look at the other varieties. I know Ali is. I was talking to Ali earlier on about the number of varieties that were already grown in the UK. Have you tried them all? Give them a go. Try a one in a season if you can. That would help us also. Lots of things to look at on that side. And also, I know in Slovenia, we've got some other varieties out there. Syrian Wolf, Steer and Dragon, Calibri, Fox, all sorts of things that we've got to try that are going well. Eureka, I think is the other one. Have a look at those. On the development side, you have an institute in Slovenia. We've been to the institute with you many times and seen the plots there. Anything exciting coming through there? Or is it more on the alpha side you're looking?
Yeah, at the moment, I was trying to say I need to start somewhere. So one thing is that I'm trying to send a message out to people here and to Ellie as well, I guess. Slovenia is also a small industry, you know, so we and the English industry, we're not competing to each other somehow on some level, you know. We are competing to each other to more bigger producers worldwide. So, and this is, so I understand what Ellie is trying to say to you all. So it's important that you still remain, and
it's important for both of us.
Yeah.
And actually, there are some similarities in what we produce, but there's a lot of difference. And Slovenia is, you know, where you grow your hops is stunningly beautiful. You know, and it's so important that industry is allowed to be maintained as well. The world is becoming full of big food, and it's so depressing. It's so depressing. I mean, you know, a lot of you know that I wear an apple hat as well. The smaller producers in smaller countries like ours are so important, but it's very difficult to compete. If I put my apple hat on, we're just competing with cheap imports, cheap. And it's cheap because it's coming from countries with cheaper labour, lower land costs, lower standards. You get red tractor assurance in the UK. Can't get that anywhere else in the world on hops.
Good. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Bostjan.
Thank you.
Will, do you want to add anything else before we tie up?
We didn't cover the market costs on other countries' hops, and I think it's probably not. You know, you gave me a moment to think about it. We're not expecting any spikes in prices this year. Generally, it's about supply and demand, and as you can tell from the reports, there will be some crops that come in a little bit below average, but I still don't think that's going to create a massive shortage. So we're not expecting some massive spikes. However, we've also covered the labour shortages and the increased costs of growing and drying the hops. And so I think there will probably be, almost across the board, a small increase in the cost of hops this year.
Silence. Right. Now, this afternoon, we've got 2 more walks. For those of you who haven't been out around the farm, it's idyllic out there, but it is a bit warm. So if you've got a hat, please wear it. And also Mark Dredge is here, and Mark's going to be doing his second round of presentations.